In this video, we will talk about the 10 plagues of Egypt. So make sure to watch the full video. The 10 plagues of Egypt, as chronicled in the book of Exodus, are a sequence of divine afflictions unleashed by God upon Egypt to compel Pharaoh to free the Israelites from slavery. Each plague was a manifestation of God's power and a direct challenge to the Egyptian deities and Pharaoh's authority. The plagues, ranging from turning the Nile to blood to the death of the firstborn, systematically dismantled the infrastructure, economy, and spiritual core of Egyptian society. Despite the escalating severity of the plagues, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened until the final, devastating plague forced him to relent, leading to the Israelites' liberation. 1. Water turned to blood, dam. The first plague struck Egypt's lifeline, the Nile River, which turned to blood as Moses struck the water with his staff. All water sources, including streams, rivers, ponds, and reservoirs, were affected, causing the fish to die and creating a horrific stench. This plague not only deprived the Egyptians of drinking water but also disrupted their daily life and agricultural activities, as the Nile was essential for irrigation and sustenance. Despite the magicians of Egypt replicating this plague on a smaller scale, Pharaoh remained unyielding, hardening his heart against Moses' plea to free the Israelites. 2. Frogs, Sfardia. In the second plague, a vast number of frogs emerged from the Nile, spreading across the land of Egypt. Frogs invaded homes, bedrooms, beds, ovens, and kneading troughs, causing widespread distress. The sheer number of amphibians created chaos as the Egyptians found them in every conceivable place, disrupting daily activities and contaminating food supplies. Pharaoh, deeply troubled by this nuisance, temporarily relented and asked Moses to pray for the removal of the frogs. However, once the frogs died and the land was filled with their decaying bodies, Pharaoh reverted to his stubborn stance and refused to let the Israelites go. 3. Lice or gnats, Kinnim. The third plague saw Aaron striking the dust of the ground with his staff, transforming it into lice or gnats that infested both humans and animals. This plague was particularly discomforting, as the tiny insects covered the bodies of the Egyptians, causing itching and irritation. The magicians of Egypt, unable to replicate this miracle, acknowledged it as the finger of God. Despite this admission, Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he continued to refuse the release of the Israelites. The omnipresence of the lice or gnats highlighted the Egyptians' vulnerability and the powerlessness of their gods and magicians against the God of Israel. 4. Flies, Araf. The fourth plague brought swarms of flies upon Egypt, filling the houses and land with these bothersome insects. Unlike previous plagues, this one did not affect the region of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, demonstrating a clear distinction made by God. The flies tormented the Egyptians, contaminating food and spreading disease, which resulted in significant suffering. Pharaoh, increasingly pressured by the escalating plagues, offered to let the Israelites worship their God within Egypt. However, Moses insisted on a complete departure to avoid offending the Egyptians with their sacrifices. Once the flies were removed at Moses' request, Pharaoh once again hardened his heart and refused to let the Israelites go. 5. Pestilence on livestock, Dever. In the fifth plague, a severe disease struck the livestock of Egypt, causing the death of horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, and goats. This pestilence decimated Egypt's animal resources, vital for transportation, agriculture, and trade. The economic impact was profound, as the loss of livestock crippled various sectors of Egyptian society. Notably, the livestock of the Israelites remained unharmed, further demonstrating God's protection over his people. Despite witnessing this selective destruction, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he refused to free the Israelites, leading to further calamities. 6. Boils, Shechem. The sixth plague afflicted the Egyptians with painful boils and sores that erupted on their skin. Moses and Aaron took handfuls of soot from a furnace and tossed it into the air, which became a fine dust that settled over Egypt, causing boils to break out on both people and animals. This physical affliction was severe, as the boils caused intense pain and suffering, rendering many Egyptians unable to perform their daily tasks. Even the magicians, who previously tried to replicate the plagues, were struck down and could not stand before Moses. Despite this personal affliction, Pharaoh's obstinacy persisted, and he refused to release the Israelites. 7. Hail, Barad. The seventh plague brought a devastating storm of hail, accompanied by thunder and lightning, unlike any Egypt had ever seen. This fierce weather phenomenon destroyed crops, shattered trees, and killed any human or animal left outdoors. The economic impact was devastating, as the barley and flax crops were ruined, threatening Egypt's food supply. Pharaoh admitted his wrongdoing and promised to let the Israelites go if the hail stopped. However, once the storm ceased at Moses' intercession, Pharaoh reneged on his promise and continued to hold the Israelites in bondage. 8. Locusts, Arbe. In the 8th plague, an east wind brought swarms of locusts that covered the land and devoured every green thing left after the hailstorm. These locusts consumed all the crops and vegetation, leaving Egypt barren and desolate. The severity of this plague lay in its total destruction of food resources, leading to a potential famine. The locusts invaded homes and fields, creating a scene of utter devastation. Pharaoh, realizing the dire situation, hastily summoned Moses and Aaron, confessing his sin and pleading for the plague's removal. 9. Darkness, Chashek. The 9th plague brought an overwhelming darkness over Egypt for 3 days, described as a darkness that could be felt. This thick darkness immobilized the Egyptians, preventing them from seeing or moving, and brought all activities to a halt. During this time, the Israelites had light in their dwellings, highlighting the distinction between them and the Egyptians. The darkness symbolized the spiritual blindness and stubbornness of Pharaoh, who continued to resist God's command. Despite the profound impact of this plague, Pharaoh remained unyielding, although he offered to let the Israelites go if they left their livestock behind. 10. Death of the firstborn, Makat Bikoret. The final and most devastating plague struck at the heart of every Egyptian family. At midnight, the Lord passed through Egypt, and every firstborn male, from Pharaoh's heir to the firstborn of the captive in the dungeon, as well as the firstborn of all the livestock, died. This catastrophic event led to widespread mourning and despair, as no Egyptian household was spared from the tragedy. The Israelites, however, were protected by marking their doorposts with the blood of a sacrificial lamb, signifying their obedience and faith in God's command. This plague broke Pharaoh's resistance, and he finally allowed the Israelites to leave Egypt. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Also, subscribe to our channel before you go. Thank you for watching.